March 11, 2026. Strait of Hormuz, international shipping lane. The crew of the MV Ocean Pearl didn't stand a chance. A low-profile drone boat, no bigger than a speedboat, cutting through the waves at 40 knots. No warnings, no radio contact, just a remote-controlled explosive racing toward their hull. The impact was instant. A fireball erupted from the port side. Metal twisted. Alarms screamed across the deck. 2 crew members lost. 26 rescued by UAE Coast Guard helicopters. The ship, a Singapore-flagged container vessel carrying electronics to South Korea, now sits burning in the middle of the Strait of Hormuz. But here's the problem. This wasn't a U.S. Navy destroyer. It wasn't an Israeli cargo ship. It wasn't even heading to Tel Aviv or New York. It was a commercial vessel bound for Seoul, a country that has absolutely nothing to do with this conflict. And it's not the only one. Since March 4th, Iranian drone boats have struck 22 vessels transiting the Strait of Hormuz. 8 of those attacks happened in less than 72 hours. But instead of hitting American or Israeli targets, Iran is destroying ships flagged by Singapore, Greece, Panama, Japan, countries that have no military alliance with the West, no involvement in this war, and in some cases, active trade relations with Tehran itself. Iran just made the worst targeting mistake of the entire conflict, and it's about to cost them everything. Iran's plan was clear. Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei's directive was explicit. Blockade the Strait of Hormuz. Stop all oil shipments heading to the United States, Israel, and their European partners. It's a strategic choke point. The strait is 21 miles wide at its narrowest point. 21 million barrels of oil per day, roughly 30% of the world's seaborne crude, normally transits through these waters. Close the strait, and you strangle the global economy. Oil prices explode, supply chains collapse, the world is forced to negotiate. So Iran deployed its asymmetric arsenal. Explosive-laden drone boats disguised as fishing vessels, shore-based anti-ship cruise missiles, naval mines scattered across shipping lanes, small, fast attack craft operating from hidden coves along the Iranian coastline. Dr. Emma Sinclair, maritime security analyst at the International Institute for Strategic Studies, explained the tactic. The Iranians are using swarm tactics. One operator can control 5 to 10 drone boats simultaneously using encrypted radio frequencies. These boats lock onto AIS signals or heat signatures and attack autonomously. You can't negotiate with them. You can't warn them off. They just explode. She's right. These aren't precision weapons, they're area denial tools. Cheap, expendable, and nearly impossible to defend against when you're dealing with dozens of wooden boats scattered across a 21-mile-wide choke point. But there's one catastrophic flaw in the strategy. Iran can't control which ships get hit, and that's where the plan falls apart. The wrong ships are burning. On March 9th, 2 vessels were struck within 6 hours of each other. The first was the MV Athens Glory, a Greek-flagged oil tanker heading to Japan. The drone boat hit near the engine room. No fatalities, but the ship lost propulsion and had to be towed to a UAE port. Greece isn't in this war. Greece has maintained neutral diplomatic relations with Iran for over a decade. Greek refineries have been buying Iranian oil through third-party brokers for years. Now, a Greek tanker is damaged, and the Greek government is facing public pressure to condemn Tehran. Then there's the Sunrise Horizon, a Panamanian-flagged bulk carrier transporting steel to India. Panama isn't involved. India isn't involved. The ship wasn't carrying weapons. It wasn't delivering supplies to a military base. It was hauling industrial steel to Mumbai. 3 crew members are still missing, presumed trapped below deck. Photos from the rescue operation show a gaping hole just above the waterline, the signature of a drone boat strike. Then there's the Kasumi Maru. A Japanese-flagged LNG tanker hit on March 10th while transiting southbound through the strait. 5 crew members injured. The ship's cargo, liquefied natural gas, narrowly avoided a catastrophic explosion. Japan has no military alliance with Israel. Japan hasn't sent weapons to Ukraine. Japan has been one of the few G7 nations maintaining limited diplomatic engagement with Tehran. Now, 5 Japanese sailors are in a hospital in Muscat, and Tokyo is reconsidering its entire Iran policy. So what was Iran thinking? The plan was simple. Hit U.S. and Israeli vessels, make the strait too dangerous for Western oil shipments, force economic pain, create leverage at the negotiating table. But the execution? Catastrophic. Because instead of hitting military convoys or vessels with clear ties to Washington and Tel Aviv, Iran is hitting neutral third-party commercial ships. And that's turning potential allies into active opponents. Take India, for example. India has been one of Iran's most reliable customers. Indian refineries have been purchasing Iranian crude through backdoor channels for years, providing Iran with desperately needed revenue despite U.S. sanctions. India also has a strategic partnership with Iran on the Chabahar port, which gives New Delhi access to Afghanistan and Central Asia without bypassing Pakistan. India has every reason to stay neutral in this conflict. But now an Indian-bound bulk carrier has been attacked. 3 crew members are missing. Indian media is covering the story 24/7. Families are demanding answers. And the Indian government, which has been silent on the U.S.-Iran war, is now being pressured by its own parliament to condemn Iran's actions. Singapore, same story. Singapore is a global shipping hub. It has no involvement in Middle Eastern conflicts. It maintains diplomatic relations with Iran. Its economy depends on freedom of navigation through the strait. Now, a Singapore-flagged container ship is at the bottom of the Gulf, and 2 Singaporean sailors are dead. Singaporean Prime Minister Lee Hsien Loong issued a rare public statement calling the attacks reckless and unacceptable. That's a diplomatic earthquake. Greece, Japan, Panama, the Marshall Islands. These aren't military targets. They're collateral damage in a campaign that's supposed to be strategic, and collateral damage has consequences. Here's the strategic problem. Iran needs international support, or at least international neutrality, to survive this war. China hasn't condemned U.S. airstrikes on Iranian nuclear facilities. Russia issued a statement calling the assassination of General Qasem Soleimani's successor a criminal act, but it hasn't intervened militarily. India, Turkey, Pakistan, Malaysia, countries that have historically maintained diplomatic and economic ties with Tehran, are all watching to see how this plays out. Professor David Hammond, director of the Center for Naval Warfare Studies at King's College London, puts it bluntly.
Iran is destroying its own diplomatic capital with every misfired drone. These attacks aren't just sinking ships, they're sinking Iran's credibility. You can't claim to be defending your sovereignty while killing Thai fishermen and Greek sailors. He's right. Take the numbers. 22 vessels attacked since March 4th. 14 of them were oil tankers or cargo ships, according to Lloyd's List intelligence. But only 3 of those vessels were heading to the United States or Israel. The rest? Japan, South Korea, India, Thailand, Greece. Countries that import oil through the strait but have no direct involvement in the war. Every attack on a neutral vessel is a diplomatic disaster for Iran. It's not just closing the strait, it's closing diplomatic doors. And the economic fallout is hitting Iran hardest. Yes, oil prices have surged. Brent crude hit $135 a barrel on March 12th. Iranian military spokesman Brigadier General Ali Fadawi warned that prices could reach $180 if the blockade continues. But Iran isn't benefiting from those high prices. Iran can't export oil if the strait is closed. Iranian tankers can't transit. Iranian revenue has collapsed. The regime is running on fumes, both literally and financially. Meanwhile, the International Energy Agency announced that 28 member countries unanimously voted to release 350 million barrels of strategic oil reserves to offset the effective closure of the strait. The global economy is adapting. Iran isn't. Dr. Leila Farzaneh, energy economist at Oxford University, explained, Iran miscalculated. They thought closing the strait would give them leverage. Instead, it's accelerated the global shift away from Persian Gulf oil. The US, EU, and Asian importers are already rerouting supply chains through the Cape of Good Hope. Iran's blockade is permanent, but not in the way they intended. That's the reality. Iran closed the strait, but in doing so, it permanently severed its own export routes. So what happens next? Iran's asymmetric strategy is working tactically, but failing strategically. Yes, the strait is closed. Yes, shipping has stopped. But Iran didn't close it by destroying U.S. aircraft carriers or Israeli naval vessels. It closed it by turning the entire global shipping industry against itself.
Insurance companies won't cover transits. Lloyd's of London has declared the strait a war risk zone, raising premiums by 300%. Shipping companies won't risk crews. The International Transport Workers Federation has advised its 1.6 million members to refuse assignments through the strait until the threat is neutralized. And neutral nations that might have stayed on the sidelines are now reconsidering their positions. President Donald Trump pledged last week to provide military escorts for commercial tankers transiting the strait, but experts are skeptical. Admiral John Richardson, retired, former chief of naval operations, explained, if the U.S. intends to escort all commercial vessels, this would require diverting dozens of destroyers, frigates, and support ships away from other critical missions. And even if we could provide escorts, would it work? These drone boats launch from unmarked fishing vessels. They blend into civilian traffic. You can't shoot at everything that floats. And here's the final kicker. Iran's drone boats can't distinguish between targets. They're either remote-controlled from shore or pre-programmed with GPS waypoints. They lock on to heat signatures, AIS transponder signals, or radar cross-sections, and they attack. There's no human verification, no last-minute abort. Just a wooden fishing boat loaded with C4 ramming into whatever ship happens to be in the area. That's not precision, that's chaos. The MV Ocean Pearl wasn't a military target. The Kasumi Maru wasn't a threat. The Athens Glory wasn't carrying weapons. They were commercial vessels doing what commercial vessels do, transiting international waters to deliver goods. Now they're casualties of a war they weren't part of. Iran's mistake wasn't closing the strait. Iran's mistake was hitting the wrong ships, and in doing so, it turned a regional conflict into a global problem. Neutral nations are now victims. Insurance companies are fleeing. Shipping routes are being rerouted around Africa, adding 2 weeks and $2 million per voyage to transit costs. And the international community, which might have stayed on the sidelines, is now being forced to pick a side. So here's the question. Did Iran just lose the diplomatic war by winning the tactical one? They closed the strait, but at what cost? Drop your answers in the comments. This is strategy versus execution in real time. If you made it this far, hit like and subscribe. We're covering the naval tactics, the strategic miscalculations, and the global implications of this conflict as it unfolds. And if you want to support the channel, join the fleet. Loyalty badges, priority updates, exclusive analysis. Click join and get on board. Iran closed the Strait of Hormuz, but in doing so, it might have just closed the door on any remaining international support. I'll see you in the next one.